Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Love Loss and Hallucinations. And I have a quick recommendation for this week's episode. If you normally just listen to this podcast, you might want to jump over to YouTube and watch the video of this one, or at least the last 15 minutes, let's say that. You listen to the normal first 45 minutes or so, wherever you normally listen to your podcast, and then jump over to YouTube to watch the last 15 minutes. And the reason for that is my guest this week gives me the gift of a round of hapé as well as singing an icaro to me. If you don't know what either of those are, you will by the time we get to that at the end of the show. It's definitely more of a visual sort of situation that you might want to check out in that capacity. Meanwhile, just to be clear, anything we discuss on this episode today should not be taken as medical advice and is for educational purposes only. If any of it intrigues you or interests you, definitely do more research. This should just be a starting point. Talk to your own doctor, talk to multiple people, and learn all you can. With that said, my guest this week is Nicho Nutu, although his real last name is Nutsu, but most people go by Nutu, so we're just going with that. Nicho is a traditionally trained Onánya healer, which is equivalent to maestro, curandero, or medico in Spanish, in the Shipibo tradition of Peru. He is also a musician, song carrier, song teller, firekeeper, forager, gardener, naturalist, wilderness guide, and yogi. He was raised in Massachusetts, graduated from the University of Arizona, and now lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. And welcome to the show, Nicho. Good to see you. I've known Nicho for really well, the last 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to cross paths with him and do some work with him, and really excited to have him on the show today. Really looking forward to this conversation. He is a plant master, man. He just you're just walking around, he's like, oh, you can eat that. So I think to start with, I know that your first trip to the Amazon, where you sort of really started to get into plant medicine and that sort of thing, was in 2012. And I guess, tell me, I also happen to know that you're of Scottish descent. And if you're not watching this, he's sort of like me, blue eyes, blonde hair, super fucking white guy. So how does someone, who grew up on the East Coast, Scottish descent, find their way to the Amazon and ends up training and wanting to train to become a healer?
Well, yeah, just thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Honored to be here. Definitely going back at least a half a decade.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, I'm just thinking of Maestro Hamilton Southerner, who you had on in the podcast earlier. And I just remember him being an inspiration to me of seeing another gringo from California becoming initiated in an Amazonian lineage. Pretty similar to the lineage that I've been initiated into in the Shipibo. And, I remember just being really fascinated by snakes, actually, when I was really young. And now I'm kind of scared of them. My brother will catch snakes. If we find a snake, he'll pick it up. I don't want to pick it up, but he'll pick it up. Rattlesnake, and somehow along the line, I'm even just thinking back to video games or whatever movies, just somehow snakes. I know I was born in the year of the snake in the Chinese zodiac as well too, but I didn't really know that until way later. And it's funny because if you ask certain tribes about the ayahuasca, animal totems, there's a lot of different, each tribe might say jaguar or hummingbird, or some will say snake, anaconda or boa. It looks like a snake, two vines wrapping around itself. But yeah, so somehow I was just drawn to going to the home of some of the biggest snakes in the world, I guess.
So yeah, I know you work with a bunch of different plant medicines, but ayahuasca is sort of you're the one you're called to work with the most. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So to back up on that question even more, I think when I was around a teenager, cannabis Cannabis came in, and I was drinking a lot at the time, back on the East Coast, just kind of like becoming a partyholic, coming from addiction in my family, on both sides, my father's side, my mother's
Oh,
side.
wow.
And so the cannabis kind of like took me away from drinking, like not as heavy. I still mixed them for a while, but then the mushrooms came in, the fungus, which saved my life. And
What do you mean by that? How did it like save your life, do you think?
oh, I love the word like fungi or like fungi, like
Yeah.
just putting the fun. I just remember like laughing so hard. And the cannabis kind of gave me that too. But just seeing the beauty, the fractal, I'm just looking at your beautiful landscape out over yonder and the hills of Mount Tam, and just like staring at the tree, like the bark,
Yeah.
just like seeing the ants walk, just hearing the bees or what, like it tuned me in. And
Like connected you to something bigger, perhaps, or at least nature that's going on.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it basically made me believe in gods or goddesses or spirits that I would have probably been a little more skeptical to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, so that led me the cannabis, fungus, and then going down to the Amazon after my college, basically graduation. And that medicine I've been studying with for about 14 years now.
Wow.
Almost every year going down to the Amazon to learn. And yeah, so that's primarily my favorite or main medicine. But then I'll also learn from different elders up here or in Mexico, and from just the sweat lodge or purification lodge, as they call it, which they're working with all these other plants, but some of them work with cactuses, so peyote or wachuma, and yeah, we're so
Yeah.
lucky. So many plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many plants.
Yeah.
Do you remember like the first time you went down there? Like, what was there a moment where you're like, oh, I need to go to Peru? And like, had you heard of ayahuasca? Was it, or were you just traveling down there? Or
Yeah, I'm feel like my brother ordered ayahuasca online at one point.
oh wow, in
Yeah,
2012, that's
yeah,
stretch.
and even Wachuma, he had like San Pedro. I remember my mom came in, he's like cutting it up, and it looks like aloe vera or something,
Yeah.
And so somehow I heard about it. When I graduated college, I met a fella, and I always describe him as like this Greek god looking dude, tall dude, very tan, and he had a glow about him. And my joke is that we were working in his family's Greek restaurant, and he would lather himself in olive oil. So he had this like actual glow to him. But then there was this ayahuasca glow about him,
Yeah.
and like a little twinkle in his eye. And so he had just been down to the Amazon, and I had a DUI after I graduated the University of Arizona. Hey, mom, graduated, got a DUI.
Stoked.
I call it my quarter life gringo crisis. And so anyways, that was like my way down. And I didn't really believe in like shamanism. I was was fascinated going back to the snake thing, or just like, I was really curious in it, but I didn't know that it was like still like actually alive and being practiced and very legit.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean the actual using the ayahuasca as medicine and all of that sort of
Yeah, and well, just even like the whole form of curandismo, of just whether you have these vegetalistas, which are like herbalists, and yeah, just the act of, using plants as prayer and healing.
Yeah. And was there a moment, like, was it your first trip down there or kind of evolved over time where you decided like, I need to learn this. I want to help people with this in this way?
Yeah, so the first trip down was just the most spectacular, um, amazing experience, and I cried a lot, and it was really hard, and I purged a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when you hear people talk about drinking ayahuasca or whatever the other plant medicine, iboga, which I don't know much about other than maybe little micros of it, or working with other plants in the family, the Jasmine Sinango family, um, and they say it's the best experience of their life. they often forget to like highlight it was the worst.
Yeah, this is true.
Hell before heaven is what I always say.
Hell before heaven. Yep,
Yeah.
100%. True. Same.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you went to Blue Morpho, and I love that just thinking of the metamorphosis of the that like going into the cocoon, being reborn.
Yeah.
It's a process.
It's a very apt metaphor for the whole thing. Yeah. And you turn into goo inside of the cocoon, and God knows how you become out the other side, you know, somehow you get put together in this whole new way. And
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it evolved over time, like this desire to like help in this way. And I mean, and to be clear, like a lot of the time it's like you organizing groups or something to go down and work with the healer that you work with, and, you know, that sort of thing, as well as here in California working with like native legal plants.
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of plants on the land that you can also work with that, you know, it's not all Aya or shrooms or anything like that. So.
Totally. Yeah. So I'm a member of multiple different Native American churches up here that are practicing with cactus and and then bringing folks down to the Amazon as well is one of my favorite things. So like bring people to the source. But yeah, just even backing up a little bit, like when I first went down to the Amazon and was exposed to this beautiful shamanic world of curandismo, which is what I really love the word curandismo of like healing with plants. I was just so jaw dropped by just the songs.
Yeah.
The heart and care of the maestros or the maestras, the Onányas which in Shipibo just means the ones who know that the plants know. They know the plants. And so they're just singing the icaros. For those that are not familiar, they're like traditionally they're so skilled. These Onányas, these maestras, they every tribe has a different, name from Brazil, which we were just with an elder last night, you and I.
Yes, we were.
A page, a chief from the Yawanawa. And so, yeah, in Colombia, it's the Taitas and just different names for these curanderos or curanderas. But traditionally in the Shipibo lineage, they would just drink the medicine. And they would then sing to the patient or the pasajero, the passenger. And a lot of people don't realize that traditionally the patient wouldn't drink the ayahuasca. It would just be the ayahuasquero, the curandero or curandera, and they would use their vision. They would have their eyes closed, and as they're singing, they would see these beautiful fractals. From think like, just to give an example of a plant up here, like a rose or the jasmine or sage or the bay tree, seeing the fractals of the leaf, of the flower, of the bark. This plant would come to them. And for those that can see a video, you can see on my shirt some of the examples of the designs or on my bracelets. And so they would then sing the spirit of this plant to the patient, and that would be the healing. And so the medicine was actually not even administered other than the ayahuasca taking it. And so the joke I always make is like Bob Marley has smoked enough weed. You don't need to smoke any weed. He can just sing to you the spirit of cannabis and he will heal you.
Yeah.
It will get you high. But if you have a little bit, it will speed up the process and perhaps be a little more enjoyable, so to say.
Yeah. Do you know when the shift was made to where people were partaking in the medicine as well, like drinking it as well? Is it like because Westerners started showing up and needed more, or some other?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not like positive of like the exact time. And I think somewhere along the line, some of the indigenous some of the locals as well, the natives were starting to partake. And no doubt a lot of those traditions almost got lost.
Yeah.
And even speaking to like the elder we were with last night, the Yawanawa, their people went down to like 200 people.
Wow.
And now they're back to like 2,000. But so some of these other tribes, it's, there's like 70 different tribes that work with the ayahuasca. And some of them are doing it still ancestrally, and some of them are more like in tribal communities. Some of them are more just like solo kind of medico doctors in their own little abode. And but somewhere along the line, it started getting shared, and that's why I think they're actually happy to share it at least most of them,
Yeah.
are.
That barrier had already been broken before like Western people started showing up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But no doubt you'll still see today a lot of the locals, indigenous, will not even still drink.
Mm.
They'll just go, they'll get the icaro. So like if you even at my maestra's center, like some of her family will just come, sit in front of her, she'll sing an icaro, and then they go. They don't need to like puke and cry and have diarrhea
like,
for hours and hours.
Did you have trouble finding someone, your maestro, to teach you? I mean, I know, say when Hamilton went down there, and he was one of the first like white guys to like really be accepted, but he had some trials and some serious like obstacles to overcome. So I'm wondering, 10, 12 years later, when you went down there, was it a little easier to find someone? Were they more open to it, or was it also hard?
Totally. It took me a moment, and kind of going back to your question before too, of like, when did it click for me of like, I just didn't, I was just not aware that it would be possible that I could learn.
Yeah.
I just was so amazed. And I was like, all I want to do is experience more of this. And don't get me wrong, there was moments where I'm like, I don't ever want to drink again.
Yeah.
And actually, even on my first trip down to the Amazon, it was in Peru with the Shipibo. There was 3 maestras and 3 maestros, and so they would all come and sing a personal icaro to the 20 people in the room. And so there's 6 different healers singing at the same time, different icaros. Very intense.
Yeah.
Other tribes will sing all together, like the Yawanawa or Hunikun and I remember on like my 3rd night, I was like, it's just too much. I was crying and purging, and the visions were beautiful, but also like overwhelming, and just having thoughts of my mother, my father, or whoever, my brother, my friends, ex-partners, just like basically saying thank you and I love you. And really just also like, realizing how I had abused my body from drugs or alcohol, or just taken life for granted, or just having those realizations. And that's the hell kind of moment. And then the purge comes, and then usually it's a heavenly kind of like monkey off the back.
Yep.
But yeah, so there was I think the 3rd night or something, I was like, I don't want to have the medicine again. And then that's when I learned, I talked to one of the facilitators, and they said, well, just come to ceremony and they'll sing to you. And that's traditionally how it was done. You don't need to have the medicine. And I was like, wow, great. So I just had a little jungle mapacho tobacco and smelt one of the mystical moonflowers that also like induces your dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Which reminds me of some of the plants I work here that just work more in the dream time. Mugwort, Artemisia, goddess of the moon kind of plants. Sagebrush and whatnot, and so that was itself was just so powerful to be in the ceremony and just listen to the cacophony of beautiful melodies and puking, purging, crying, and while being sober, and so that gave me a little confidence to go back and have another cup, and fast forward a year later, I returned down to the jungle. Fast forward another year, returned to the jungle. Basically every year and a half over that decade and, couple years of change, going down there, somewhere along the line, I started realizing maybe I could learn this. Maybe this is something that, I could share with others. And, that took a lot of ceremonies and a lot of time to get a inkling of confidence and support from my maestra. But so it was hard. I went to multiple different tribes, to go back to your question, before I found my maestra that felt like a really good, safe and welcoming, encouraging. And there were some other good ones along the way, but it was just about finding the right fit,
the right vibe. And
yeah.
And I imagine like those first, as you said, it took quite a few ceremonies to like there must have been like imposter syndrome and what am I doing? And am I really going to do this? Like, what the hell?
And I still sometimes have that little inkling of doubt, or, just coming in and just, my maestro always say, I muchas pruebas en este camino, is like, there's many tests of this path, of this road. And I remember even once I had my blessing as a maestro, as a curandero, Onánya, I almost like didn't believe it. This was like 3 years ago or so.
Yeah. So
And-
you're already like 10 years in almost.
Exactly.
When she said, okay, you've at least made that level. And there's obviously always learning to have, but
Of course, it's kind of like getting a bachelor's then a PhD, or
Yeah.
and never ending, and the tests never stop coming. But
Mhm.
so still, even making sure like I don't want to be culturally appropriating,
Yeah.
or yeah, just want to honor and pay respect. And
100%.
I even like worded this to my maestra this last dieta. I was just down there about a month ago, bringing another group down, and it was the third group I've brought down, and I was trying to explain to her that, like, when I explain to others, peer Westerners, that, like, I'm a gringo, but, I've been initiated and dug my well deep, so to say. And she was really sweet. She was like, "But you have all of the ancestors from the Shipibo, like, behind you." And
Wow.
she's like, "Good, like, humildad, like, bueno, like, I'm glad that you have this, but also realize that you have, earned this blessing,
Yeah.
with her and her family's lineage of,
Yeah.
support."
Yeah. And I know of a couple people who have been in ceremony with you somewhere in this world, and they have duly reported that Nicho is the real deal, man. So, yeah, you have learned your training well. And, was it this training and the plant medicine that, I mean, I just love your passion for all of this, for the plants, for the knowledge, and not just plant medicine, like all the plants, and like just going on a walk with you here in Northern California, and you just know so much, and you're just like this walking encyclopedia about plants.
Mm.
And so did that come from the plant medicine, or were you already into kind of plants beforehand, or?
That's a great question. So, yeah, it's both.
Mm,
So, like, backtracking to teenage, high school years, I worked on a couple of, farms.
okay.
Some were just like apple orchards. Some were more like, multi-crop kind of produce. And some we did with like our hands. Some were bigger farms that had more tractors. These were just my summertime jobs, basically. So not like year round, but, and even in my college years as well too. And then just going back to thinking of like my father just taking me fishing,
Mm-hmm.
taking me skiing, just like getting me out in nature, camping, whatever summer camps. I like look back at all of that because I remember even just thinking like, oh, I didn't start at this like young age to become a curandero like some of the indigenous.
At least not intentionally.
At least not intentionally, totally. And it's interesting, even the Yawanawa, I remember hearing them say that actually sometimes they don't always want the youth to start super young. Sometimes they actually want them. Some do. Some other tribes do. Shipibo. But basically, they're like, sometimes it's actually really good to have a different life. To like get, so to say, temptations of food, because this path is a very strict dieta of you can't eat this, you can't eat that. For example, all these over the years of training, for those not familiar with the dieta, it's like 0 salt, 0 oil, 0 sugar, other than maybe some fruits that they're selective about fruits, 0 spices, you can't have sex, even in your dreams, no masturbation, and so no wet dreams. And so yeah, it's a very regimented lifestyle to learn from ayahuasca and all these other plants that they value equally as important. And a lot of people don't realize that this dieta is actually for not just aya, but for all these other plants.
For learning from the plants.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so going back to like all my years of gardening, farming, just landscaping, I just worked for multiple different companies, and I realized like that in that way I was learning from plants before I realized it.
Yeah.
And so the cannabis and the fungus helped me tap in a little bit deeper there. But of course I didn't have a guide at the time.
Right.
And so once I started seeing how the ceremonies were done in these more indigenous settings, it helped me then translate that to working with plants here. Um, and just your regular old plants, just like taking a more fasted state and then working with some of these other, just, mint, tulsi, rose, sage, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, say a little more about the dietas, and you've already outlined what you can't have, and that it I guess it's sort of opening you up to be able to receive knowledge from plants,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, how long does a typical dieta last, and like, how are you getting this knowledge? Let's say from a non-plant medicine. Let's say it's sage or one of the tulsi or something that you mentioned.
Yeah. So typically a beginner diet is around like 2 weeks.
Mm.
You could do less. I think like eight days is something just over a week.
That gets really hard. No salt for 2 weeks.
Totally. I don't even know how I could go through like one day of no salt up here, but somehow when you're down there, you just surrender
You're
to
sweating. It's humid.
it's so hot. Totally. And yeah, no oil, it's so then in this, and this is not just disclaimer, like not a healthy diet long term.
Yeah.
And so it's never really done for more than a couple weeks to a couple months.
Wow.
To maximum like a year.
I mean, that's hardcore.
Hard-
Super hardcore. A year.
Hardcore. It's, like I know you've done a vision quest, and
Yeah.
it's similar to like here's 4 days of, a fasted state.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's basically a version of that. And so then by bringing in your most quote unquote basic normal plants,
Mm-hmm.
even matcha or coffee, a lot of people don't know the ayahuasca. There's the vine, but then the leaf chacruna is in the coffee family.
Mm.
And so I believe a lot of cultures around the world are learning from plants more than they realize, whether it's like the incense they're burning,
Mm-hmm.
or, frankincense in the churches, different resins of different trees, even just like the homes being built of plants, the guitar is a plant, the djembe,
Right.
all of these things are plants. And or from animals, certain drums have hides of animals, but even the flute is a tree, right? And
Yeah.
so by being in this like very fasted state, one can then learn the melodies of these plants.
Mm.
And that's really the basis around their dieta or their training to learn how to heal.
Well, and I know since rolling into the musical side of it and the songs and the icaros.
Yes, yeah.
I'm like, am I saying that right?
Tomato, tomato, potato, potato.
Icaros.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you really, before you started this path, didn't consider yourself a singer. I think you played some guitar maybe, or knew how to play some instruments, but you didn't consider yourself a singer.
Definitely not.
And you have a very, to us people who aren't hanging out in the Amazon all the time, a very unique singing style. It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's powerful, especially when you're on medicine. But at any time, how did that evolve for you? And just talk a little more about, the power of these songs.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I definitely didn't sing before. I remember a girl, I can't remember her name or what she looked like, but a young girl when I was really young tell me she heard me singing something, I don't even know what, but she's like, you should just only sing in the shower or something.
Oh, people, you don't know the impact you're having.
And I don't know if that like really, probably subconsciously, but I just didn't really sing other than maybe in the car or to the radio.
Yeah.
For a long time. I remember being in a choir or whatever music class at school, and just being like nervous or ashamed or and so I took a couple guitar lessons growing up, and but I still don't even consider myself like and I play multiple other instruments now, but they all have no wrong note. Anyone can play them. I say I can play them okay, but the plants taught me how to sing. It's just that simple.
Wow.
And that sounds so complex and weird at the same time too, but and it started with humming. And so when anyone ever asks me like how to learn, if they're curious in these dietas, and you don't have to go all the way to the Amazon to do this. You can just do this in the backyard with your matcha or with your roses or your mint, whatever the sage, basil, tulsi tea, whatever you like to drink. And it doesn't have to be multiple weeks. You can do a shorter one.
Like a 4-day one.
Exactly. You could, yeah. In the Amazon, if you're going to go down there, you want at least a week.
Yeah. If you're going through the effort.
Totally. Yeah. But there's sort of little dietas. But anyways, by making this intentional relationship with the plants, they can help open the voice. And so the fungus and cannabis, they helped a little bit. And just like basically oming and humming. And in that way, I wasn't like trying to like compose lyrics on the guitar. But I do also think playing with an instrument or a singing bowl or harmonium, that can all be another really beautiful, like a kirtan kind of style. Yeah.
Yeah, and a kirtan is, for those of you who don't know, it's more, is it Hindu sort of background or?
Yeah, it's mantras.
Mantras,
So they're singing. It's it's like kind of call and response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you recall like the first real song that came through and you're like, oh my God, this is like a real song that's coming through me right now?
Well, it's, I think I actually was starting to sing. I was doing like Om Namah Shivaya. And yeah, so I was singing, it's just a Sanskrit. Basically, believe if I correctly, it's like a mantra of like transformation. And so just oming like the sound of the universe, that helped open my voice. And then I just started humming after that. And I think there was a couple medicine songs that I started singing along to. One so simply just like medicina cura cura medicina.
Yeah.
Just medicine heals or cures, and that I just kind of just kept repeating that. And eventually just started finding different melodies and different tunes and whistling, which I really believe a lot of people have an icaro and they don't even realize it. Like, for example, you have a beautiful whistle.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And so whistling while you work and going back to like just having that cup of coffee or matcha, I believe a lot of people, think of musicians or whatnot too. Like, for example, hops and beer is related to cannabis. Too much alcohol, definitely not good, but the hop spirit, or whatever other tinctures, like microdosing, the plants basically can come through in many ways. And then going back to the guitar or the tree or the plant, whatever's involved there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of people are learning this medicinal healing, vibrational, without even realizing it, so to say.
I love the microdosing the plants. It's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, of a non-plant medicine plant, non-hallucinogenic, that you have, I assume you have done dietas with a kind of big hallucinating plant. What is something you've learned from one of those plants, and what was the plant?
It's a good question. There's one of my favorite plants. Tobacco has a big family. A lot of people don't realize tobacco is like tomato, potato.
Really?
Ashwagandha.
Oh yeah.
The musk of a horse is what the Sanskrit word.
Tastes like that.
Totally. Totally musky. And goji berries, tobacco family. And what else? I forget if I mentioned eggplant, but basically jalapeno habanero spicy hot sauce family. Tobacco has like a spicy taste. So some of the tribes use, might as well just bring that up for a moment, the hapé, the tobacco snuff, which the powder right there for those that are watching.
Yeah, and if you're not watching, he was holding up the powder, the hapé. It looks like this beige, very fine, like finer than sand sort of powder.
Yeah.
And then this first thing you held up, which sort of has two ends, a hole going through it, and a very geometric design that's been applied to it.
Yeah.
Which is called a
tepi.
And this is for one person to blow the hapé into another person's nose.
Exactly. Yes. Or the self-administering kuripe, which you can put up your own nose.
Yeah.
And so the tobacco, there's, they also use many other plants in the hapé or rome, depending on the tribe. They have different names. And so there's like the ash, think like your Palo Santo or your sage. the ash of that plant then mixed with tobacco. And so this is how some of the other tribes work. But so there's another couple plants in that tobacco family that in the Shipibo tradition, they'll diet. One of my favorite ones that I've dieted pretty much every single time I've gone down with my maestra at some point is Chiric Sinango. And Chiric Sinango is it's a nightshade, so tobacco family. And they use it for like childhood trauma, especially like broken families. So like when my father um left my mother, had an affair, I realized that was where a lot of my trauma stemmed from, and then perhaps drinking a lot to try and like cover that up. And so that Chiric Sinango basically really helped me, one, just like have like compassion and forgiveness for my father instead of like anger and hatred towards him. And then also just like that towards myself for whatever silly, stupid things I did when I was young. And I realized I was like starting to kind of follow in his footsteps in not a good way. He taught me so many amazing things, but then there was the thorn on the rose.
Yeah.
And so that plant, and to give a plant for people that don't know these jungle plants, like just the rose in the garden as well has been one of my favorite plants. Any mint, sage family is just so big. I love my pesto, and actually one of my maestras, there's like a lady in her village. She's like a nun. She'll come and just smack you with basil when she gives you massages. You just feel like you have like a pesto.
That's awesome.
A pesto limpieza is what I call it.
So when you're on the dieta of, what was the one that I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
Chiric Sinango.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Are you like taking it by a tea, and are you just doing this tea, or do they give you like a little extra nutrition, or what's the situation there?
Yeah, so it's basically the root. It's most traditionally there's like barks or leaves, flowers, or roots that are given. And, bigger dietas can be bigger trees. Think you have a redwood or a bay tree or an oak tree. Those aren't always usually the first plants to start with. And those usually have stricter diets. For example, you may not have fruit allowed, or certain fruits, or chicken, or, fish. Certain kinds of fish are allowed on those diets. But usually you start with smaller plants. So like this basil, they have a jungle basil that's basically like a tulsi, a holy basil. It's more like white sage, rosemary kind of. So not like your culinary little basil, which is medicinal as well. But so Chiric Sinango is kind of like a shrub.
Yeah.
Think like a manzanita, or trying to think of another plant that would be similar to it. It's not a full-on tree. And so these are good like beginner plants to kind of just give like the cleaning and the love. And so that's why I think of like rose as well too. That's like this bushy, very beautiful and happy, blissful, healing plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love, so you're eating the root or that plant, or in a tea, or both, and
yes. So thank you. You're drinking it in tea.
okay.
Yeah, and then they'll bathe you with it.
Okay.
If the flowers or the leaves, they'll give you sauna, like steam baths.
Oh, wow.
Which is lovely.
Yeah.
And so it might be in powder, it might be the shavings of the bark, it might be the leaves, and it's usually cold infusion. Sometimes they might make like an alcohol tincture, or they might make a like decoction, kind of like very thicker kind of. Some plants they boil down into like a paste. Really just depends,
So you're taking it in multiple times a day and sort of meditating on it, or just sitting with it, or just living with it in your system as you go about your day.
Exactly.
All of the above.
Exactly. And there's not, it's very much, I haven't actually done one, but from my understanding, like what of Vipassana, for those that are not familiar, basically like a silent retreat. And more from like a yogic tradition, it's like you're basically just meditating with your plant, drinking it 3 times a day, or twice a day, depending on, and you go down to the river if you want to bathe, or you do some yoga or stretch, whatever you like, but you're very weak. You don't have a lot of energy without salt. Your spirit feels really strong and really reinforced or cleansed, but your body is actually quite
Wow.
But it still actually isn't uncommon for people to have like actually this energy, and they might feel like they want to go running, or but
might not get very far, but you feel like you want to.
Yeah. It's this.
Yeah, I remember that feeling that at the end of the Vision Quest after fasting for 4 days, like suddenly just had so much energy.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's something similar to that.
Yeah.
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 Kind of going back to the plant medicine, gonna ask a couple bigger questions about this and see if you can encapsulate it all down, because it might be a big answer. But I'm just wondering, what has the plants, and you can pick just whichever one you want to focus on, what have they taught you about love?
About love. That's a great. Yeah. So I remember my blessing as a maestro 3 years ago. It was in the middle of ceremony, and one of my maestras, she has multiple other maestros in her family, her cousins, her nephews, brother. Um, and it was actually one of the maestros that was married into the family. And after he sang me my icaro, I still had multiple other maestros to receive an icaro from. And he basically was like, now as a maestro, a curandero, like your like contract or job is to love everyone no matter what. And that was it. There was nothing like, um, I was so like happy and confused at the same time. I was like, oh, that's the only like.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
course,
it's such simple words, yet it's such a huge feat.
totally,
Yeah.
and a difficult one.
Yeah.
I always think of the Ram Dass quote of, "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family."
Yep.
So I have these enlightenments in the jungle, or I feel like I hit, get a
And
glimpse, a tip of the iceberg, and then I
you
come
come
home.
back to
Yeah,
relationship and family. And
exactly. And then I get to practice that,
yeah.
and so it's ultimately going back to whether it was the tobacco nightshade with the family trauma of just forgiveness, and but just learning to really just love.
Forgiveness, compassion, empathy, all of those.
Yes,
Yeah.
and primarily with all of my own flaws, and then realizing everyone else is just going through the same hard human existence that this is. And so that's ultimately, there's another great maestro I have a lot of friends that study with from the Ashanikan, and he always says the plants, like when they ask him what do they teach him, he's like, just to be a better person. That's the most important.
Yep.
Compassion, humility, and I love that. And the more I go down this path, the more I realize that's what the plants want, is just peace and love, basically.
Yeah. Not to get too hippie, but peace and love, man.
Oh, that's great. Totally.
But yeah, I mean, it is true. And it is just like, if certainly there are people who can use these plants for negative purposes, and they have, but, overall, if your intention is you're wanting to be a better person, that is what the plants will show you. And that just like filters out, like, it starts with you and you're the rock in the lake, and the waves go out from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Just the rippling. And that, you go so deep there. And I know you've been down to the Amazon a couple of times too, and I find it fascinating with, that tradition where they add the plants into the brew as well too, just like a different form of dieta. But every tradition has it's just like everybody thinks it's just ayahuasca, but there's actually it's all these other plants. It's this whole, very similar to Ayurveda or Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
They're, Western herbalism as well too. And all these plants can teach all of they call them plantas maestras, palos maestros, like they're all here to help, support, build our homes and our instruments, and fuel the fire to cook our food. And it's just a magic to really think about.
They're here to help, and yet we are not doing a hell of a good job of helping them. So got to step that up, people.
Yes.
Kind of on related, but on the opposite tip of that, I also happen to know, like, right now, like, your dog is of 14 years, I think,
Yeah.
is winding down his time here with you, and he's this very beautiful, special medicine dog for sure. I've been in ceremonies with the dog, and
Yeah.
how do you feel like the plant medicine has helped you prepare for loss, whether it's your dog or I know your dad is also declining,
Yeah.
and my heart is feeling that,
Mm.
but I'm wondering, how do you think you're able to handle this differently now versus a decade ago when you started this journey?
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful questions. I remember a couple dietas ago, um, my father had a heart attack right before I went down
Oof.
for diet, and I almost didn't go. He was able to get a stent in, and he's been okay. But I remember on that dieta, I was just crying and crying pretty much in every ceremony,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You don't have to drink the medicine, but if
Ceremonies are 3 times a week.
it's available. And, and and so then you're taking the other plants on those other days and having the saunas or massages or whatever other form, and so it was so supportive to have that.
Mm,
It was very challenging, and, but I felt like I got to pre-grieve
mm.
his passing
Oh,
and
wow.
just, like, making peace. Um, there was one particular ceremony that was out of this world, but basically like an eagle came and like ripped my heart out and gave me like a new heart, which sounds absurd for a lot of the world to realize, but in that moment it was very real that it felt like it was like,
As real as this table.
yes, as real as this table, and it felt like any anger or resentment I had at my father,
Mm,
who is
wow.
basically still struggling with his alcoholism, and that breaks my heart just to see him kind of drinking his trauma away, and
Mm,
he grew up in the Cold War from Romania. He defected, and anyways, he hit fame at a young age, movie star, and had police trying to like extort money from him, basically as
in
the
Romania.
in Romania. They called him the Romanian James Dean, and
Amazing.
yeah, and so he had his
Wow.
a beautiful but rough life at the same
Yeah,
time, and so
yeah.
like the medicine helped me see that
Mm,
and just see him leaving my mom and the affair and just sending him all the love and just that he did the best job that he could, and he taught me so many amazing things, and he was there as much as and so then going to my dog as well on this last dieta, which was just a couple months ago, and my dog was still pretty strong at that point, but I knew he was starting to slow down, and so I've just been again a lot of tears and just like pre-grieving and really just like feeling that moment
mm,
of
mm.
their passage.
Yeah.
And I remember that eagle actually came and like I'd see taking my father kind of, in my visionary space of what felt like a heaven or afterlife of just, being like, hey, he'll be there on the other side. That I really, before plant medicine, I don't know if I would have believed in an afterlife
Oh,
or
yeah. Okay.
reincarnation. And I feel like medicine has helped me believe in that, which I find very comforting
Yeah. I agree.
to
I
think
agree.
about.
Yes. I agree the medicine helped me see that as well, so and it
Yeah.
is very comforting. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And just to know, like, okay, they may not know where they're going, but
Yeah.
if it's anything like this,
Yeah.
everything is good.
Totally. And that just makes me, because I didn't realize, I'm like, wow, I've had my own fear around
Of
passing
course.
and losing our loved one. And it's been so beautiful to like just really think about that
Mm,
of, you know, and I think this is why I love ayahuasca so much. They call it the vine of the soul, the vine of the dead,
mhm.
and giving you that kind of glimpse into this afterlife,
Yeah.
that we'll all experience.
Yes.
Or have already
Inevitable.
experienced. Yeah, totally.
That and taxes, right? That's
Yeah,
what they say.
yeah.
Well, we had an idea before we started this that when we went to this Yawanawa ceremony last night, and what it was that they were sharing some of their heritage and why they use hapé which is, various things like mental clarity and grounding, and it helps them hunt and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I happened to buy some last night, and I'm like, well, we could do a little bit during the ceremony. And Nick said he might even sing in icaro.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're up for that,
Totally.
okay, we're just going to do a small amount. And I would advise, if you've never done this sort of thing, to have someone who knows what they're doing give it to you the first couple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as the Yawanawa chief was saying last night, like it can really, it seems like not much, but it can really like
Yeah.
take you to places, and that's why I'm only going to do a small dose.
Yeah. Yeah. Un
Because I have
poquito.
to function the rest of the day.
Yes.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's do it.
Oh,
Finish on
shush.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just to explain a little bit more for those that are not familiar with the medicine, this hapé coming mostly from the Brazilian Amazon, but some of the other tribes as well. Some use it, like in Ecuador, they use like a liquid tobacco,
Mm,
and they just take a leaf and pour it down their nose. The Colombians will make like a resin out of it, and they just eat a little bit of it. But yeah, this Brazilian, the many Brazilian different tribes, the Awanawa, Hunikun, and they often will apply it to themselves in the morning, but it's preferred to be given almost like a massage. It's nicer to have somebody do it for you.
and it's sort of like it's a connecting gift too, I would say.
Yes.
From my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it reminds me of the New Zealand, the Maori people that have the hongi, where they like put their foreheads together, and one blows out their breath and the other one breathes in, and that's like their way of saying hello. So this is almost like that of exchanging the wind, the spirit from each other.
That's very apt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, it's, when I was in high school and a lot of college, like I was straight edge, man. I didn't do anything. And, particularly tobacco, tobacco's bad. It's going to kill you. It's, all the things that we know it is, at least Western cigarette tobacco.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I do use this occasionally, like maybe once or 1 to 3 times a month.
Yeah.
Just when I'm meditating, because it just grounds me. Like it feels like I am sinking through the earth sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but also like opening to whatever else wants to, like the universe,
Yeah.
honestly, for those 20 minutes. And yeah, a 20-minute meditation with hapé goes by like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been an interesting, for myself, I'm just saying it's an interesting journey to go from like, I will never touch a cigarette, to having someone blow tobacco up my nose.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And I think it's important to say too that, like anything, too much of anything is not good. But this particular tobacco is jungle tobacco, which maybe you can say more about how that's different than what we perceive as tobacco.
Totally. So yeah, cigarettes, for example, have like 500 chemicals.
Yeah.
It's like rat poison and nail polish remover and gunpowder, and I don't even know what else. But that's what causes cancer.
Yeah.
It's not the tobacco itself. And I'm sure the pesticides on a lot of that tobacco is a contributing factor too. So when grown wildly, like heirloom tobacco itself is actually used in a lot of pesticides, like the nicotine, which is affecting a lot of the bees, unfortunately. But this tobacco, when it's grown like intentionally with prayer and all of that, it doesn't need a pesticide. It basically is anti-parasitic as a plant. It's antifungal. It's antiviral.
Oh, wow.
It's like incredibly medicinal. If you're bit by a snake or a spider, they'll put tobacco on the wound. This is similar with peyote as well too, the magical cactus from Mexico. So yeah, it's really medicine. It's not just for a buzz.
Yeah.
But it no doubt gives a little buzz, but that buzz is translated much like a coffee buzz. It's like caffeine and nicotine to me are really these amazing tools for concentration, for focus, for meditation, for dreams, the tobacco. And so this is something I love sharing with people. I love working with people. It's a shorter experience compared to some of these other bigger plant medicines.
20 minutes-ish.
Sure. Yeah, more or less.
Until you can like kind of function again.
Yeah, totally. And the amount I'm giving you is more like 5, a couple minutes, and so I'll sing a song for that little bit of time. And Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. Colds and flus, this is, for allergies, all the good things. So this is how they stay strong in the Amazon, where there's malaria and dengue and all these other jungle fungal,
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah. So, Mom, I know you're really going to enjoy
yeah,
this.
yeah. That's great. Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Hapésito.
Papacito. I'm not sure which end's which, honestly.
That works. It's still summoned from last time.
Maybe hold that up so people, just so you can see how much he's about to give me. That's
Like a pinky nail per nostril is on the smaller side. A thumbnail per nostril would be like a bigger, more medicinal dose, which could cause purging.
Yeah.
In the larger dose, but also the blow is important. So I'm going to give a softer blow as opposed to a
Yeah.
send you
I'm
off.
not gonna blow it to the back of my brain.
Yes,
Just the front of my nostrils.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was saying, like the first time I was given this, like totally floored me, and it does take some experience to kind of get used to it and like know what the reaction is going to be. And I mean, there's certainly always times where you're like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
always a shock. But,
Yeah. I'm actually going to go that way. Yep. Correct.
Okay. Let's go over here. And I will just last say, like, and even he was saying last night, the chief, like having an intention before doing this or a question, especially if I'm about to meditate, like I'll always get some sort of almost always get some sort of visual answer to whatever I'm thinking or wondering about, or, where I'm wanting to go in life or something like that. So, all right.
Yeah.
Number 1. And you have to do it on both nostrils.
That's
so.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice delivery. Okay.
Na 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 we na na we. Ni ni nai nai. Na na we na na e na na we na na we. Na ya ya na 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 we na na e. Ra ya na we. Ra ya he ya na na we na 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 e. Na 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 we na 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 we na 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 we. Planta medicina he anana he nanana we. Cura cura medicina anana we nanana we. Tabagito merigito he ahi. Mapagito merigito he ahi. Hapezito netivo nanana he anana we. Plantas maestras anawi, palos maestros anai.Ome boto nativo hi, cuji medicina hi, hakon medicina hi, sui medicina hi. Ustavina nana we nana 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 we. Yeah, na na we. Yeah, na ye. Ay ay ay. Pino Medico ya na we. Tongiri ay nine nine nine. Kolabri bri bri nine nine. Bewa bewa zamani nine 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 nine. Hey na ye. Oh na na we. Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 we. Visa visa vengi. Judo judo vengi. Soa soa vengi. Bunda bunda vengi. Bana bana vengi. Given given vengi. Kyo kyo vengi. Na 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 we. Ari nine 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 nine. I ni nine nine. I ni nine nine. Hey 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 hey.
Oof. That is a beautiful way to start the day. Having you sing to me, oh my God. Some hapé, wow.
Wake up and smell the hapé.
Wake up and smell the hapé. We're gonna make t-shirts. Whew, yeah. Try to compose some words.
Take your time.
But yeah, very important to breathe through your mouth
Mhm.
during that situation. If you ever find yourself on the receiving end of hapé.
Yeah.
And yeah, spitting is common. Retching is
Yep.
just clearing your throat because it does tend to trickle down your throat.
Yep.
That was beautiful, man.
No, thank you.
Nicho, thank you for that. Thank you for being a guest today and sharing your beautiful icaro with everyone out there. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about plants or this sort of work?
My website would be a good spot. I'm here in Marin, Bay Area, over in Fairfax, and I guide just plant excursions, basically plant meditations, in and outdoors, and
yeah, just a plant walk with him is awesome. Like you're just walking, say Mount Tam, and you just know so much, and it's an education. And if you have any interest in anything like that, he's your guy.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you have a website.
Onánya.com. Yeah.
I'll put that in the link.
Thank
and,
you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Nicho. This was an amazing hour, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did.
Oh, thank you. Con mucho gusto.
All right, brother.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Till next time.
Thank you.
It's gonna be hard to focus and have words. So, wow. Yeah, even though that was only a small amount that Nicho gave me, definitely brought me very into my body, very into the moment, very feeling just present and grounded as hapé usually does for me. So I hope you found that interesting. It was a beautiful experience for me. Hopefully, maybe it was for you in some way too. Next week's guest is Ethan Nadelman. Ethan is the founder of the Drug Policy Alliance, a New York-based nonprofit organization that has been working since the 80s to end the war on drugs. So if Nancy Reagan is on one side with Just Say No and DARE and all that sort of thing, Ethan was on the other side of that spectrum. So it's interesting now. It's going to be really interesting talking to him now that, marijuana is more acceptable, mushrooms are getting to be more acceptable, and he had a critical role in a lot of that happening. So tune in next week for all that. He's a really spirited, interesting human, and I look forward to sharing that conversation with you. Hope you have a great week. Find some joy out there. And if you can, go for a walk somewhere outside, somewhere green, hopefully, and just take a moment, take some deep breaths, and appreciate each breath that you take. Thanks for tuning in.